Hi there, and welcome to Unfiltered Solopreneur, the podcast where we share real, unvarnished stories of people who dared to break free from the corporate grind. I'm your host, Nikhil, and I'm passionate about helping solopreneurs like you turn their dreams into reality. What happens when you decide your last day job will literally be your last day job ever? In this episode, Bast Madama shares how a cushy remote startup gig became her launching pad for creative independence. We talk about why she refuses to pour her soul into work she doesn't control, how she's building multiple revenue streams under her Lainaverse brand, and why she believes capitalism's rules are made up, so you're free to make up your own. If you're tired of trading your time for someone else's vision and ready to bet on yourself, this conversation will light a fire under you. I'll see you on the other side. Hello and welcome to a new episode of Unfiltered Solopreneur. I'm your host, Nikhil Vaish, founder and CEO of Boost Solo. My next guest is a digital renegade and multi-hyphenate creative who's built a career by rejecting the rules, rewriting the script, and turning her passions into power. Bast, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me in the epic
Well, it's a
intro.
pleasure to have you here. I know people love the intros, but I always tell them it's your story that creates the intro. Nothing I've done, no magic in it from me. So other than putting the words together. So let me dive right in. Now you said even before the last layoff, you had already decided it would be your last day on the job, right? When you started.
Mhm.
So what made you so sure? And how did that mindset shift change everything for you?
I never wanted a day job. Um, I've always just had a thing where if America, if we were all at a standard of the average day job was like what 9 to 2, or if it was like a 12 to 5, whatever the math is, that was 20 hours a week. Sure, I would do that, but that's not it. You want 40 hours of my time? Absolutely fucking not. So with the job that I had when I got it, it was in 2015. So I was working for a delivery company called Order Up. They were purchased, I think, within a couple months that I had started. They were bought by Groupon, and then I got laid off because Groupon sold the company to Grubhub. And Grubhub was like, all right, we don't need any of you assholes. They just got rid of us. And like,
Yeah.
we had about 2 months severance, whatever. But at the time that I got the job, before then, I had my first day job, which was I didn't know how to leverage my skills. I didn't know where my skills were in the job market. I didn't really know what to do because the only thing that I was kind of groomed for was to get a government job as a language analyst because I'd been studying Japanese since I was 10 years old and got my degree in it. And after that, there was really no discussion about what else to do because the only thing I wanted to do was to be an artist, but I didn't really have guidance
Right.
with that. So it was like, the day job that I had before Order Up was for this company called CMD, and they were like an outsourced call center in downtown Baltimore for colleges because colleges are like, well, we don't have the resource, or we don't want to invest the resources in having on campus phones answered. So we'll have the financial aid and kind of, I think it was mainly just financial aid calls directed through that company. And it was cool the first couple. I'd done it for, was it 6 months? It was just really emotionally taxing for me because once it got the financial aid season, I'm listening to kids like they didn't get enough money, so they couldn't go to school. Parents calling crying, their kid is sleeping on the bench outside. And it's like I was a highly empathetic person. I didn't have like great boundaries at that time, so it was draining for me. On top of driving into downtown Baltimore, dealing with the morning and evening traffic. And then at that time, my car didn't have air conditioning. It was a summer. So it was just like, I need to get
Yeah.
I was like, I just need to get the fuck up out of here. So it was like from people that I was friends with at the time, they were working at PayPal and they heard about the job and they sent it my way. And they were kind of, I guess, trying to use me as a guinea pig to apply for it. And I'm like, all right, whatever. And it ended up being a remote job. So I ended up getting that. And that was back in 2015 when remote jobs weren't the norm. And this was a
Right.
startup. I'd never worked for a startup before. I didn't know anything about that. And it was pretty much a millennial company. Like everybody, we were all in the 20s, maybe early 30s age range. That was pretty much everybody at the company. So just based off of that environment, like I only had to because I went and I was answering calls, but it was, it's not as dire if, oh, you didn't get your lobster mac and cheese versus a kid, they can't go to school that year or that semester.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it was just way more relaxed. There really wasn't any stress. I pretty much got the framework from working from home. Once I got like a promotion or moved up in the company, they gave me like a MacBook Mini and I guess like 30-inch TV or monitor to take home and just a keyboard, everything. So that was fucking great compared to what everybody else I knew oh yeah, and the friends at that time who had referred the job to me or they had told me about it, they were interested. So then I'm like, all right, I'll refer y'all because I think I was getting like $200 or $300 for each of them. So I'm like, oh yeah, I know all them people. Run me my $600, run me my money.
Yeah.
So it was just so cushy and relaxed. And then the guy I got in a relationship with, who was in that friend group, he lived in downtown Baltimore. The company was in downtown Baltimore. So I had like a partial discount. So I was ordering food all the time. And I just really enjoyed it. So from that point, I'm like, I don't think there's any other job I'll find like this. So this is just it. Once I feel the need to
Right.
leave this job, like it didn't cross my mind to get laid off or anything, but it was like once I feel
Yeah.
like it's time for me to go, this is just it for me.
Yeah, it doesn't get better than that, right? So that was the decision you made in your mind.
Yeah,
So it was solopreneurship basically
yeah,
after that is kind of what you're saying.
yeah.
So you shared that you grew up being told to get a government job and follow a secure path, right? So what helped you sort of break away from that blueprint and really trust your own instincts? Because you sort of talked about the fact you didn't have a plan, you weren't sort of ready, so to speak.
Um, so I guess that's the thing. I did have a plan. I wasn't, I still had like confidence issues in moving forward with the plan and just getting out there. Like I had confidence issues, I had social anxiety. So it was just really difficult for me at that time. Because at the end of the day, my outlook as far as like my upbringing is my parents believed they needed to mold a child. And from my perspective, there was already a human in here, and there were things that I already had in mind that I wanted to do. So, I mean, I was a kid. So at that time, I was just going along with how domineering they were. And sure, in perspective, I understand like my parents got government jobs. They grew up poor and there just wasn't any real discussion on what their thought process was or their strategy. For whatever reason, they didn't think they needed to do that, even though they knew they had an intelligent child for whatever reason. So that's just how that went. I was just so downtrodden and I just didn't feel I had it in me from just all of that to take a chance on myself. Even when I was in college, I was trying to figure out, okay, I'm gonna get this oh, I can double major. So I'll major in Japanese and yeah, it was just all lack of confidence because for whatever reason, I don't know why I listened to a dumb fucking 19-year-old guy I was with, but he was majoring in art and computer science. Well, he was double majoring in art and computer science. And I was like, oh, well, maybe I should double major art and Japanese. And then for whatever reason, he like discouraged me from it. And I just decided not to do it. And then what? I ended up it's always like for whatever reason. I guess spiritually, intuitively, freshman year, because of my profile as an incoming student, I wasn't like the average student. Like, they have at University of Maryland. Sure, I'm sure things have changed, but depending on like what your profile is, you can kind of access, what is it, like more support or more, I don't know how to describe it. It's, you can basically kind of get more support based off of your background, like as far as what dorms were. Like dorms are kind of their own community. So I had qualified for this thing called College Park Scholars, and there were these different segments, and I didn't really see any that lined up with art, but there was one that was called Business Economy or Business Society and the Economy that I signed up for. And those were the other students who had signed up for that were kids who didn't get into, or I guess young adults who didn't get into Maryland's business school. So they were, and that program was through Maryland's business school. So I had considered my freshman year, because I had a couple friends who were applying to get into the business school. I considered going into the business school and becoming a business major. And just based off of, I think there was like an accounting class or maybe calculus, I decided not to do it. So it's like these little things, these little decisions that ultimately came down to my lack of confidence and social anxiety delayed me from getting where I am now.
Okay. But since then you sort of started building that muscle, right? Because you
Mhm.
did client gigs, you did blog writing, you sort of tried a bunch of different things. And then one interesting thing you also told me was, as you sort of developed on this journey, you also reached a point where you decided to stop building for others, right? And start
Yep.
building something that was truly yours. Can you talk a little bit about that and that evolution?
Yeah, it's like I'm fine since, I don't know if that was before we talked that I finally made the commitment like last week, or it's like now I'm actually doing it this week that I'm with it. That was something I always just wanted, was to do my own thing. I was writing stories as a kid. Like my original desire was to become a novelist, because I was reading fantasy and sci-fi novels when I was a kid, and then I got into anime, then I was playing video games, like specifically the art from the game, the like franchise Street Fighter really stuck out to me, and I started looking at that path. And when I started making connections on Facebook with other Black artists specifically who were going into comics and the animation industry, and really reading on that background and reading on the industry, artists, I mean, it's not that different. Artists are getting exploited. You're expected to put in all this time, and then especially with the animation industry, once the project is done, you got to find another job. And my thought process is, why the fuck am I gonna, like, the artists that I knew were already putting in so much time, and because we were all in our 20s and that was just a time period, there was like this pride in kind of destroying yourself to be great. Like, oh, I'm only eating ramen noodles and I draw for 10 hours a day and my hand is aching and all that. Like, that was a point of pride for a lot of artists.
Right.
So pouring in all this time, and then for the artists that gone to some of the top art schools, then you're getting in 50 to $100,000 of debt, and then to get into this industry that's not even guaranteeing you have stable, like you may have a job for a year or a year and a half, then you got to look for something else, and then there's not that many positions, and then you're expected to put, when it's crunch time, to put in 50, 60 plus hours a week, and the pay, you may not even be able to afford to live comfortably. Like, I grew up middle class, I'm used to stability, and that wasn't lining up with me with, why am I going to pour so much of myself? And I don't even own what I'm producing. I'm making this for somebody else's, for a company. And I'm doing all this work and you get the rights to my work. I've poured in, I'm giving you my life.
Yeah.
And I don't ensure my name is in the credits that everybody walks out of the theater and doesn't pay attention to. And it was just that I feel like maybe that's just an intuitive thing or just a what? Just like me having an awareness or just a growing awareness of what my path was and where I belonged, which was I valued ownership. If I'm pouring myself into something, I need to have ownership. It's like what I think it was the case with like even Stranger Things on Netflix or any Netflix series. Once those creators sell the rights, they don't get anything else after that. Whereas Netflix, you're making merchandise, you're making spin-offs. The company is continually bringing in revenue, and I ain't getting shit. So when it came to doing a service business, like even when I first started doing freelance illustration, what really what was really adding to it was I had done like these little $25 illustration, like sort of, they're not caricatures, but it was like I was drawing people as characters or whatever the design was. And there was this one woman who wanted me to draw her son. And I'm like, oh, cool. And her son, she was a wise mother, got her son started as an entrepreneur and like making his own products and his own brand when he was like 6 years old. But what pissed me off was I did this $25 illustration for her. And then within about 6 months, a year, I see that she butchered my art and like cut the body off and took the head and made a logo out of it. And then you're selling another product. I'm not getting any of that revenue. And then when I had done like a children's book no, I think I had originally put it in the contract, but when I had done like a children's book for like a friend's brother at the time, it was only for like $500. And what the agreement was, I get 2-3% of sales, maybe each month or maybe at the end of the year from the book sales. And he was a emotionally dysregulated asshole to work with. So I was like, well, fuck it. I don't want that from you. And you ain't even pay me that much to begin with. So it was just like me developing more confidence over if I am sharing my work with you, I deserve a cut. And I
Mhm.
deserve a cut until I die. It's like my outlook at this point. Because again, I see how business is structured and how artists get treated and how artists get shortchanged. And my whole thing is I've been told I'm selfish throughout my life. And I used to feel bad about it until I don't know. I think I was pretending to feel bad about it because I was being told to feel bad about it. Because it's like I'm giving you a piece of myself. I'm giving you what I spent hours struggling to do.
Yeah.
You don't get to have that for free. And just
Yeah.
that deep sense of ownership of what's rightfully mine and what I know that I produce for myself. And then even at this point, I've gone through so much emotionally and gone through so much in my life at this point. No, you don't get to have anything for free from me. So when it comes to a service, that's what work is. Work is you're exchanging your labor for something else. Again, if you're not getting much of a cut from it, or especially I would start to get resentful that I'm relying on this income with something that I don't feel like I fully own. And this isn't even a vision of the stuff that I want to make. I just got sick of it where I have my own ideas. I just need I'm building the income and the funds to do it, but I want my time. I feel like I was working as a kid because I was groomed to get a government job. So I've been working for other people all of my life.
Yeah. That's the first time I've heard anyone talk about their parents sort of being employed by their parents. I think it's funny. But there's a lot you just gave me to unpack there, and I think I almost feel my wife's an artist, so I totally understand where you're coming from. Because I see how she pours so much into her art, right? When she creates something, it's not just like a scribble that you do on a thing. There's a piece of you that goes into every artwork that you create. So I hear you about that. And the other interesting thing to me is just this month. So Ryan Coogler, the director who did Black Panther, he
Yes.
signed a deal with Warner Brothers that the Sinners, this movie that he just released, which is the number one at the box office for the last 2 weeks, it's going to default back. The rights are going to come back to him after 20 years. So now, like, Hollywood's shaking in its boots now, because it's like, if that becomes the new default model, although he has since come out and said it's only this one film, it's the exception. But I think that is going to be a bigger problem with AI now, right? Because this it's so easy to take a piece of somebody's original work and turn it into something else, and then and like you said, not give the artist a fair share. So I think that's a very interesting discussion and debate we should probably have as a maybe a separate episode or a roundtable or something. But I totally hear what you're saying. And the second thing I think is, which is interesting to me, is that the same myth, right? Because when we were launching my first startup like 10, 15 years ago, there was this notion of like, you got to be living in your car eating ramen, right, every day, and that's what a successful startup founder is, which is absolute BS. This is like sort of the myth that's been sold, and the PR establishment that works with the startup world has also been sort of selling this idea of similar to the starving artist, I think, because it
Mhm.
just makes it easy to exploit people and get their stuff for like a lot less money, right? So it's not, I'm not anti-capitalist or anything, but I know there's a rebalancing, I think, that is underway, honestly, in society right now. So I think it's a very interesting topic.
Yeah,
So
for sure. Um, I mean that all of that just kind of segues, and I'm sure we'll get into it, into the current project I'm working on, which
yeah.
is divesting from, I say it's divesting from the energy and the ideologies of capitalism, because it is built on extraction.
Right. Yeah. We'll get into that, because it seems like you've shifted from when we first chatted. So let
And
me just
because I
ask you.
saw Sinners on Monday.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. It's on my list though. So yeah, I definitely want to see it. Anything vampire, I'm in. Um, but so let me ask you now, in terms of, so you talked about sort of not being, not having the confidence initially, but you sort of already had the idea, and that was always your plan. So what did you expect solopreneurship to be like, and what's the reality been like? Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think it's the same I said last time. I had no clue.
Yeah.
I had no. I was just like, so I don't really visualize things. I feel through things. So it was just like a sensation of just, I think this is what I want to do. So that, like, okay, I guess the context for the solopreneurship when I first got started, when I was doing blog posts for the cannabis industry, that was built off of, I saw an ad that was like, you can be a copywriter and make $100,000 a year. And then coming across like a couple people that are like, I only work 10, 20 hours a week and I'm making 10, $20,000 a month. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I want. And then I joined this was a website called Black Freelance. That was very fundamental in me learning to leverage myself, especially because I joined the community and it's led by this woman, Megan, whose last name I can't seem to get, but I called her like my freelance auntie, because she was essentially like my mentor, where she was, her mission is to help more Black people to take on freelance work. Even if you have her path is more stable as far as have your day job, develop like a freelance business on the side, because relying on your job for only one stream of income isn't sustainable. So explore more options. And then when I was working with her, I guess she's been doing it for about 20 years. She writes for the healthcare industry, and she said that she makes between this was 5 years ago. It might be more than that now, but she was saying she makes between 20 and $60,000 a month. So from and I don't remember how much she said that she worked throughout the week, but I'm sure it was less than 20 hours a week, which was what I wanted. So my model in my head was still based off of doing the blogging was my day job. It's not what I love to do, but it was paying the
Right.
bills, but I'm working less and getting paid more. That's what was most important to me is my time being optimized. So that's the vision that I started with was like, okay, I'm gonna do 20 hours a week with the blogging, and then I'm gonna dial this down to 10 hours a week while I'm dialing up the amount of money that I'm making. And then I can spend the rest of the time doing art and just doing life how I want it to. That's the vision that I had then. Right now, that sense evolved since I got into it. I mean, it's like once you get into the actual experience, I have to be in it and feel it and do it before I get a better idea of what exactly I want. So right
Yeah.
now, I'm in a place where it's, I want to I want to have like 2 days a week where I'm kind of grinding and I'm putting in about 10 hours, upwards 10 hours, like 2 days a week just to have that extra momentum. And then I work throughout the day, maybe 3 to 6 hours, what, another 2 to 3 or 4 days throughout the week. And I have at least 1 or 2 days a week. It just depends on the work. So it's like me figuring out a flow at this point of like, I want my work schedule to be I work 3 weeks, I take 10 days off. I work 3 weeks, I take 10 days off. So it's really been about tuning into what I want, what works for me. Like the 10 days off is like, it's a reset. Those 3 weeks, like for right now, that I'm building out Lainaverse, my brand, that I view as like the parent company, and then each of my projects is like its own brand, kind of like Disney has Marvel and the Muppets and Star Wars. That's how I'm viewing each thing. So like for these 3 week periods, I focus on one brand and like I might have like another project or something that I'm working on
Hmm.
the side, but like that is my priority. After that 3 week period, maybe I need to put in another 3 weeks to get a certain goal. But that's what I've built out at this point because it's solopreneurship as far as thinking big picture of you always hear or it goes around that the wealthy have 7 streams of income. So it's like I'm creating these different streams of income, but these different streams of income are also satisfying me as far as interest in
Yeah.
projects. Like I've come up with ideas. At this point, I'm like, I have brilliant ideas. These are great, but I got to actually do the shit.
Yeah.
So it's I wanna bring them into fruition, but it's also making sure I build it as like a flywheel so that the money's recurring, so then when I move into the next project, I don't have to put in as much time or I may or may not have the funds. Ideally, I'd have the funds, then I can like get a VA or whatever team member to keep that running, and then I keep building the next thing.
Yeah, no, that's really smart, and I have to say, I think I agree with Megan Auntie's advice about having a side hustle. Right? I think that's a really good way to do it because I don't think you can rely on you certainly can't rely on a corporate job anymore. Like my father had one job, for like 40 years, and that generation could do it, but it's just gone away. That guarantee and security is not there, and also I feel like we can we can constantly learn today, which we couldn't 20, 30 years ago. Education was sort of more compacted. You had school, you had college, and that was it. You didn't have the ability to keep learning like we do today. So I think as a
Mhm.
result of that, I don't see anyone. I'm a big proponent of having a side hustle, building a personal brand, and obviously becoming a solopreneur, even though I'm Generation X. But I think the other interesting thing is, in terms of the way you're thinking about it, I think that's really smart because someone once told me that if you're not making money while you sleep, you don't have a business, you have a hobby. So that's really the way you're thinking of sort of building Lainaverse, as you said, with multiple revenue streams and sort of and ensuring that those tick along even when you're not spending every hour, right? Because if you're only billing for an hour,
Mhm.
you only have so many hours in a day. So if
Yeah.
you're not creating systems and productizing things, then you're really going to struggle long term as a solopreneur. So I think that's really smart way of
Yeah.
approaching it.
And just to circle back to, Ryan Coogler's deal with Warner Brothers, that's ultimately my ultimate vision is I want to produce my own films.
Yeah,
So I'm building the foundation so I can fund my own films as well. It's, he has to work out that deal because at the end of the day, you need whatever millions of dollars to invest in producing the film.
right.
So for me, it's because I guess it's financial trauma or whatever, but like having to rely on somebody else for money is you have power over me. You decide that you want to do power plays, that you get a say. And even from hearing and seeing how most of the entertainment industry goes, the people who have money make restrictions or they keep like the biggest deal about Sinners is it's an original film and it's making this much money and we don't get to experience that much original material. Everything ends up turning into a franchise. And really after seeing that film, after I watched, like, Ryan Coogler is actually one of my favorite, like, top favorite directors. And after seeing the film, especially because he's very intentional about Black culture and how he's serving our people, it did flip a switch in me as far as the value of ownership and how, not just me producing, like, I'm not going to produce these films by myself. I'm going to be employing people. I'm going to have a team. I'm helping people to pay for their lives. And that's the other side is as an executive at that point, I care because I've watched and seen and read about artists not getting by. I'm building a company where you can have a family and be an animator. You can afford to have whatever, if sure, you won't have a mansion. I can't promise you that, but you do deserve a good, not even good, you deserve a great quality of life, and that's important to me. You're helping me to produce my vision. You're a part of my vision. So I want to make sure you're straight, your family's straight, that you have additional money to even invest in other things that you want to do. And so it's important for me to have these different, to just start a step, because I have a 10-year plan. Or right now, this is the 5-year plan because I want to start the company in my 40s and be retired at that, but where I don't have to work, but I can just focus on that. But this is like the vision I've had since my 20s is especially because I've been in an art community and I've seen, like, I've had friends who have worked on what major music videos, and I forget what, I don't know what they're working on at this point. Like one dude, he's making like he's doing the Static Shock comic for DC. Another guy that I still talk to, he writes for Marvel Comics. And so it's like I've had these friendships and these relationships all my life. Like it's not me just, oh, I'm a hire these motherfuckers. Like, no, these are my people. And again, from like a cultural standpoint, and even as a woman, there aren't the nobody off the top, the average person more likely off the top of their head can't name a Black female director. And there
No,
aren't any Black owned animation studios that are to the size or even have the legacy of something like Disney or Pixar or Leica or anything like that. So it's just a vital cultural shift for me to, but at the end of the day, I gotta have funds to do it.
yeah, yeah. No, I think that's a noble goal. I love it. And just promise me one thing: you will also have an Indian superhero because we're missing one of those too.
Uh,
So, uh, So tell me now. And so I think that's really interesting. But that sort of brings me to the next question, which is you're not just juggling different companies and revenue streams, but you also juggle different identities, right? So
Mhm.
artist, community builder, digital strategist. So have you ever felt pressure to sort of narrow your focus, or are you just sort of you're like, screw it, I'm going to embrace this multifaceted me as a strength? How are you approaching that? Because people talk about niching, focus.
So the what I've learned, because like I've been scattered. I see it just more as I've been experimenting. I apparently experiment more than the average person because they think I'm confused. I'm like, no, motherfucker, you're confused. I need to experience things before I'm gonna invest more time into it. So I got
Yeah.
to get a feel for it. Like again, with the blog post and writing that. Eventually, I'm like, I don't think I can. I was what 6 months, maybe. I think I was sticking with it for about a year before I started branching out. But I'm just like, no, yeah, it was like at least a year before I started branching out. But it's still just like, I'm thinking again with long term, how can I sustain this for 3 months? Can I sustain this for 6 months? Can I sustain this for a year? Do I want to do this shit for 3 years? Do I want to be known for this? That again, that was the thing with me being the blog copywriter was I was developing a reputation. Again, it's from experience. I was developing a reputation. So even from the clients I had immediately after we had finished work, they're referring people to me because I started getting published. Like I was published on Leafly, which is like a national cannabis website and everything. I got published there. Then I gotten like a job with writing. The company has since been rebranded, but I ended up writing like the messaging strategy and writing the website for Marshawn Lynch's cannabis brand. He's a retired NFL player. Like, and I got that because another writer in the industry who I'd never met and still have not met in person, she referred the job to me.
Wow.
So yeah, it's like all of this happened because I niched and let myself be known as that. When I would introduce myself as that, people were interested. So it really depends on what your goals are and just understanding that leverage. And I guess it gets into like my focus now is I'm developing a community called Laid Back Masters, where I'm helping creatives to kind of divest from the capitalist energy, pick one of your gifts and monetize it. People complain about niching and complain about monetizing your hobbies because of burnout. You don't feel like you're being yourself, but it's like it depends on what your goal is. Because when it comes to putting something out in the world, and this is something that I had to adjust to, like I said, because I had social anxiety and I kind of had like some deep resentment toward being in the public as an artist because to me, people feel entitled to entertainment. They feel, and that's why art is stolen. That's why we're exploited in the industry because people feel entitled to be entertained, but you don't want to respect the source. But from that, it's just the aspect of niching is that is for the public. It is not necessarily a reflection of you. It's being able to contain and have a solid strategy for why you're doing it. So if I've seen the perspective and I've played around the perspective that you can be multifaceted and that's your personal brand. And people know that you do these different things, but it comes down to, okay, then how are you making money from that?
Hmm.
If how are people what are you doing to make it so that people can give you the money? It's one thing if you're being an influencer or you're a part of the creator fund and you're leaning on that to yeah, you're leaning on that for funds, but it's a different ballpark. And then you know what your product is, how to build your personal brand is a different ballpark when just depending on what you want to do. So with the niching, ultimately the thing is it also just makes it easier for people to know who you are, what you do, how they can pay you. That's the
Yeah.
simplest like understanding is because like I said, people are like, I'm confused. You seem confused. And I'm just like, I'm not confused. You're confused. And I got annoyed with it for a bit, but then it's like, okay. I'm also not like when I was experimenting a lot, it's like, okay, I'm not getting paid. I'm not getting opportunities. Like people are reaching out to me. because they don't know
Yeah, what you're
how to
good
make.
at. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't. There's not that bridge there. So
Yeah.
I just say for niching and picking a focus, just think of it as a bridge. It's a strategy for whatever your goal is. To me, I'm I found it. It just made it easier to make money and to get work, that people knew I did this thing and I had this service and I had the pipeline. Everything was just straight to make it simple for me to get paid.
Yeah. No, I love how you describe that because that's something I struggle with too because I've done so many different things. I worked in agencies, I worked with startups, I've launched a company, and I always thought it was like all this diverse experience is what is my strength. But you're right. When I started consulting, people were really confused. They were like, wait a minute, do you work with nonprofits? Do you work with startups? Do you work with like corporations? Like, what do you do? And I was like, I do all of these things. And they were like, no, no, but like you said, and I love the bridge, right? I've never heard it described that way, but I love that because you need to give them a bridge, right? Because to cross that river and get to you, they have to have some means to sort of get there. You have to make it easy. And of course, I think the other thing is you have to be able to monetize because bills are not going to pay themselves, right? Passions don't pay bills. So you still got to find that balance. So now tell me now you sort of so when we last chatted, I think you said you were building Discord communities for cannabis brands, right? So
Mm-mm.
so
Well,
you've moved
I've, I've,
away from
I've
that, or
shifted.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. So tell me now what's your focus now, and you just touched on it a little bit, which is and talk a little bit more to me about the divesting from capitalism and monetizing.
All right. So, all right. It's because, like I said, I don't feel like doing service. I want to do my own thing. That was the main
Yeah.
shift. But it's also because I don't plan to not offer that as a service. The main thing is to set the pricing on it, I need the experience and I need results.
Yeah.
So instead of pricing myself low and doing it for somebody else, I can do it for myself. So I'm changing the order of which I'm doing things, which leads to the Discord. I'm building like a Discord ecosystem through Lainaverse. But
Okay.
like I said, I have the different brands. I call them a cosmos. Lainaverse is the universe. It's the universe of me. Each cosmos is like its own galaxy. That's how I view it. So the cosmos that I'm focused on is Laid Back Masters. That is it's pretty much just me building off of my background and I guess the nostalgia of being in an art community, because it just feels good to be around other creatives or other people who are just in alignment with where you are. But again, me wanting better for my community and seeing how our economy is going to shit. I don't care what anybody's imagination is saying. The economy's going to shit. You got to figure out something else. And it's like I just watched this not YouTube, this TikTok maybe an hour ago or so, and this chick, she's like, baby, you stop, you can't find a job because you are the job. Like, we have to take, and I think that's just been the whole thing with me shifting and developing the confidence to do that. And most people's blocks is because you're wired to answer to somebody else. You don't answer to yourself and don't think, and you come up with all these obstacles and everything everybody says against building your own path and building your own way. And then again, divesting from the capitalist ideology is when people talk about they deal with burnout or they feel. I had like a little back and forth. I mean, it was a little discussion on TikTok with, I forget what the TikTok was about, but like in the comments, this chick was like, she hates that we have to deal with money and like money's disgusting and we have to deal with this falsehood and she doesn't like currency. And it's like, the money is neutral. The problem
Yeah.
is the system. The money is a tool. It took me a while to get to this point, but it's a lot of ingrained stuff that we believe. And again, the belief is that all these things are impermanent, that this is just how things are, when it's like everything's made up. Humans made up this shit. Capitalism is made up. Everything is made up. And if everything is made up, and like, again, when people are like, oh, the powers that be or the people in power, you're disempowering yourself. These motherfuckers are going to die. Everybody's going to die. So what makes them special is there's really nothing special about people, about the billionaires. Yeah, to some degree, it's you're a white dude, so the world, your people set up the world for you. So yeah, it's kind of a cakewalk. You don't have to go through all the mental gymnastics of feeling like you're not good enough because you were already validated. And that's just what it is. So a part of my community is kind of helping people to develop confidence, but it's also, to me, it's self-liberation. Everybody talks about helping other people, but you got to help you before you help somebody else. You got to do this deep work of digging out all this bullshit that gets poured into your head and your body and your heart, your soul, to build something different. Because like, I'm a very spiritual person, and really we're all spirits in a body. We're all spiritual people. It just depends on how you tap into it. But I've been getting evidence and seeing you can have what you want in life. You can have what you want in life, but there's just so much in us that convinces us that we can't unless we follow some other motherfucker's rules. And it's really just devalue these people, devalue this system, and believe, like, if you don't want to play the game, you don't have to play the game. That's why I call it the laid back masters. This isn't a grind. I said, like, I want to put in 2 days a week, doing 10 hours and doing my own grind. Yeah, I'm choosing to do that. That is deliberate because of my goals. But I do understand the next day I got to chill. I got to recover. I got to plan for those 10-hour days, making sure I know when I'm eating, I get up and exercise, I balance it out. Because nobody else is going to tell me to do that. I make the rules. I I own me. And really what especially started getting me to take more ownership of myself is I am responsible for my death. I'm the only one who's going to be at the deathbed. I have to answer to me.
Yeah.
So anybody else who's speaking over my life, are you going to trade places with me? Are you even going to be around that long?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a very interesting way to look at it. But you're right. It's like, again, a lot to unpack. But I think that's part of the journey of solopreneurship, right? Is also choosing your own path. And it's not about income, it's not about making shitloads of money. It's about designing the life around what aligns with your values and your desires, right? And that's really what I always say solopreneurship is about. So I love how you're sort of approaching that. And again, there are trade-offs, right? If you want to work a certain hours a week, you'll also have trade-offs based on the decisions that you make. But those are, again, uh, your decisions, right? They're not driven by somebody else. They're not dictated by somebody else. And I do think we're sort of going through a global sort of rebalancing, right, with Gen Z and millennials sort of challenging, as you said, the rules as they were written. Because, like you said, we made them up; they can be remade. There's no reason why these rules cannot be remade. So I think your guys' generation is really sort of throwing out the old rule books, right? We see that everywhere. So it'll be
Yeah,
interesting to see how that unfolds.
because it's coming apart.
Yeah,
Like the main thing, like everybody's complaining about millennials and everything. We don't get to have the day job for 20 years and retire anymore.
yeah,
Most of us, like, I'm privileged where I didn't have any college debt. My parents saved and paid for it, but that's not the case for most of us. So everybody's in debt. You already got five figures, tens of thousands of dollars of debt. Then you can't even afford a house. And then the jobs that you want, it's not stable. Like, you may have it for a couple years and you gotta find something else. And or you're not getting paid enough. So it's just that we're figuring, I don't understand how the older generation isn't seeing we have to do something different. It doesn't work anymore. Like,
yeah.
you're even getting a job and you have to have a job to have health insurance. But even if you have health insurance, it doesn't cover everything. Nothing's working.
Yeah, true. I agree. The old systems are broken. That contract is gone. And yeah, and most people don't even have retirement benefits anymore, leave alone, just being able to retire. So I think, we're in the process of a very interesting shift that is happening. So the other thing which is interesting that you said to me was that you said brand building today is often performative, right? Especially online. So what does authentic marketing look like for you? And how do you avoid the trap of posting to post, which I see a lot of people just sort of creating content because, again, they've been told you need to go create content.
Really is about being, I think it's just a comfortability thing and like being yourself, where most people don't know. So I've learned, it's a very weird life lesson to learn how much people don't like themselves. I
Yeah.
have suffered a lot from being around people who don't like themselves and don't like showing up as themselves. And that's just ultimately what it is to me, with everybody showing up on social media and may not be posting authentically, is because in your real life, you're not comfortable with being yourself. And then there's also social media is pretty much kind of like being on a stage. You got, in your day to day life, sure, you may, I don't know, you're in a grocery store. Sure, there might be over 100 people in a grocery store, but they're not all paying attention to you. And I think that's just like a human adaptation thing, whether you're making video or you're just writing posts and putting them out or putting visuals out. Again, for me, having had social anxiety, is dealing with that level of attention. That's what kept me where I've been on and off my social media channels and trying to experiment, because I would just get so overwhelmed and uncomfortable, because I'm just like, oh my God, what if this goes viral? And I have all these shitty comments, or like people like asking me for things and I'm not ready. And I think it's a modern human adjustment that needs to happen, but it's also a reflection of, again, like I said, people not really knowing themselves and getting to that point. I mean, there's people who perform who they are. Sometimes I guess you got to be a character, or you just say, well, that's my job. And, if you get what you want out of it, it is what it is. But yeah, that's just my outlook on it. It just depends on where you are with your personal journey. It's an adjustment. It's now, like kids, it's normal to be on social media. It's very normalized now. But that's just what it is. It's learning to show up as yourself and getting used to that level of attention on you.
Yeah, and you're right, it is not natural, right? Because it reminds me of Shakespeare saying all the world's a stage and we're merely players. But now we actually are living on a stage, right? And we're performing all the time. And you're right. I mean, I talk about the social media myth, which is people only show you what they think you want to see and what they want to show, right? They don't really show the unvarnished truth, or like you said, the very few people are sort of comfortable sharing the warts and the things that are not pretty or finessed or like perfect. So it has become sort of a warped reality. It doesn't feel real anymore. And I think, honestly, I feel like people are going the other way now, right? Like people are yearning for real things. Not just in social media. People are like, even in person, sort of like tactile stuff. Younger people are buying records, making mixtapes. So there's a lot of change happening from, I think, that stunted sort of idea of the world.
Hmm.
So let me ask you now, if we were to meet again from 5 years, you sort of touched on this a little bit, but where would you want to be 5 years from now?
As far as what, just life?
Yeah, in terms of your Lainaverse and your business and even life.
I guess literally 5 years from now is when I get to be the entertainment executive of my studio. That's where that's ultimately what it is. Like, I have everything else running and all I do is focus on producing my stories.
Okay, that's cool. I look forward to it. And then don't forget the Indian superhero. I'm counting on her. So, if you could offer one piece of advice to someone who's wanting to start their solopreneur journey, what would you tell them?
Um, I guess what the generic thing, have some money saved up. I ain't do that. But Definitely start building a team of support because it's a shift, and you are going to change and your life is going to change in potentially very unexpected ways. People you thought you've known all your life, you start seeing y'all aren't. You may grow apart or you were never meant to be aligned with to begin with. So definitely joining like a cohort, join the laid back masters if you're a creative. But it's find a community, get mentorship, invest in the mentorship with somebody who is doing what you wanted. Like, of course, they're further along than you, but definitely focus on somebody who is doing what you want and make that investment. And definitely get a therapist because it's because it's I was expecting was, I'm looking to get paid and to do this. But again, it triggered so many different changes in me and started making me reevaluate my life. And it ended up costing me because I didn't have that level of support to I didn't have the friends, I didn't have the family who were on that level to really start dealing with these deep issues that have been blocking me. That, like I said, the confidence, the social anxiety issues, all that have been blocking my potential. And now I'm working with a therapist to really address that. And really, I'd worked with a therapist before, but I wasn't ready to go that deep. So be willing. You can't keep hiding. Is ultimately
Yeah.
what it is. You got to be you.
And especially on this journey, right? You really are standing out there, like, completely exposed. And that's part of the I think, the trial and the triumph of this journey, right? You get to know yourself in a way that you wouldn't in any other job description, I think. So I think that's great advice. So that brings us to our rapid fire round. So I'm just going to throw a couple of fun questions at you and give us whatever comes to mind. So if your business had a tagline today, what would it be?
So Lainaverse is, I guess, is mainly for me. I am that eclectic artist sharing her creative mastery and monetized schemes.
Okay, cool. And if Lainaverse was a fictional world, what genre would it be?
Certifiably fantasy.
Okay. um, what's a question you wish clients would ask you, but they never do?
Can I pay you up front?
Oh, I love that one.
Can I pay you in full today?
Yeah. And do the work later, anytime. Don't worry about it. What's a Japanese concept or word that perfectly captures your approach to business?
Fudoshin. Okay, it is on point. Fudoshin is like there's multiple principles of, like, I guess, Bushido and martial arts, but Fudoshin means immovable mind, unwavering spirit.
Love it. Lots of actually Japanese concepts and words that I love. Um, what's a tool or platform that you use that people totally underestimate?
TikTok. Without fail.
They underestimated. Well, we'll
I've heard so many people complain about it, or like they're proud of themselves. I'm not on TikTok. And it's like, well, that's because you're whack. How about that?
okay. I confess I'm not on TikTok, but I really mean it.
But as long as you're not complaining and talking shit about TikTok, you're
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
It's like the people who are proud of themselves for it. It's like, okay, loser, whatever.
My view is just they don't need old farts on TikTok, so I'm just too old for the platform.
That's not
So
true. I I follow people of pretty much I can't say every single age bracket. I think the oldest person I might follow is like this woman might be in her 70s, and she's this old Asian lady who like plays piano or guitar with her chihuahua.
all right. Well, you've inspired me. So you might just see me on TikTok, Bass.
Look, just let me
Well,
know. Just let me,
and
I'm
world,
Lainaverse on there.
I'm letting the world know. You can blame Bast for my TikTok channel. Well, it's been so much fun chatting with you. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, and I really appreciate you sharing all the insights and wisdom.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun. It look even like when I said the bridge thing, that just came off the top. I learned things about myself while we're talking.
That's beautiful. I'm glad. That's the way it should be. Bast's story is a raw and powerful blueprint for anyone looking to build a business that truly reflects their authentic self, no matter how unconventional. Her story challenges every assumption about work, ownership, and what it means to build something meaningful. Here are my key takeaways from our conversation. The last day mindset can be your liberator. Bast didn't just leave her job, she treated it like research, realizing that even good jobs come with ceilings. Solopreneurs, sometimes the clarity comes not from a crisis, but from simply deciding what you won't tolerate anymore. This mindset shift empowers you to seek radical autonomy. Ownership isn't selfish, it's strategic. When clients butchered her $25 artwork to make logos, Bast learned a brutal lesson. If you're pouring your soul into something, you deserve a piece of it forever. Value your intellectual property and creative labor. If you're pouring yourself into your work, make sure you're not just delivering value, you're retaining some of it. Embrace experimentation to find your flow. When people called her scattered, Bast's response was classic. I'm not confused, you're confused. She was experimenting, not wandering. Don't fear being scattered in the early stages. Each experiment is data. Follow your curiosity until you find the mix of work and life that matches your energy, your time, and your actual skills. Niching is a bridge to monetization, not a limitation. Bast has an interesting take on the niching down debate. She sees it as a bridge, not a prison, a temporary frame that helps people hire her before she expands beyond it. Think of your niche as training wheels, not handcuffs. Use it to build credibility and cash flow, and then expand when you're ready. Build multiple revenue streams like Disney builds franchises. Bass' Lainaverse concept, treating each product like its own brand under a parent company, is brilliant. She's not just building a business, she's building a self sustaining world that can eventually fund her own films. Now, to be clear, this isn't about doing everything at once or chasing shiny objects. But if you can identify different problems your audience has and solve them in aligned, intentional ways, then small, strategic revenue streams can add up to something powerful. Your support system is non negotiable. One of Bass's most honest takeaways: this path will change you in ways you won't see coming. Get therapy, find community, invest in mentorship, because you can't do this alone. You'll hear me say this again and again. Invest in your mental and emotional well being as seriously as you invest in your business. Surround yourself with a tribe that gets what this journey takes and can help you stay grounded when things get wobbly, and they always do. Bast reminds us that solopreneurship isn't just about escaping the corporate grind, it's about rejecting the entire premise that someone else should own the fruits of your labor. Her 10-year plan to fund Black creators and make her own films isn't just ambitious, it's deeply intentional. Thanks for listening to Unfiltered Solopreneur. If you got value from today's episode, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another solopreneur who needs this message. Until next time, keep breaking free from the corporate grind, and remember, your story is your most powerful asset. Live solo or die corporate.